Then I would laugh with you all night. Take my chance and hold you close, and I'd follow you back home. If I could be somebody else, I would be your Romeo, and I would never let you go. Maybe I could be your stranger. One too many and strobing lights, yet I can spot you in this crowd. Am I staring way too obvious? But if I gathered all my confidence, could I walk right up to you, be the stranger you've been looking for? No, I know this could never be, but I'm still allowed to dream. And if I was you, then I would laugh with you all night. Take my chance and hold you close, and I'd follow you back home. If I could be somebody else, I would be your Romeo, and I would never let you go. Maybe I could be your stranger. Maybe I could be your stranger. Oh, come on, man, I know you can do it. Stop staring in the mirror, you act like a loser. Be the best you can and just give it a try. I'm walking towards you, my legs are shaking. I'm in double speed and my heart is racing. I'm doing the best I can, just give it a try. And now you laugh with me all night. Took my chance and held you close, and I followed you back home. No need to be somebody else. I can be your Romeo, and I will never let you go. I shut my feelings out. Look at me like I'm different. Still you stick with me for something real. It's so lost in my moments. Doesn't mean I don't need you. I fell in love with the colors. They kinda tell me what I'm thinking. Fell in love with the way we are and the way we lose it. There's something different about us, and the reason why we stay. We fly around like paper planes. They never know where we will fall. Nobody can see us. Still they wanna tear us apart. There's something different about the way we are. There's something different about us. There's something different about us. We're pouring cup after cup after cup. That's just the way we do it. Anything just to look after who we like. Yeah, we're loving with it. Think we're so messed up. Even if what we're doing is bad, there's so many emotions. Sharing stories that we never had yet. And it is real. I think we're searching for reasons not to be like them. We fly around like paper planes. They never know where we will fall. Nobody can see us. Still they wanna tear us apart. There's something different about the way we are. There's something different about us. There's something different about us. There's something different about the way we are. There's something different about the way we are.
Ah, aspetta.
Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and days of old lang syne? For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll talk a cup of kindness yet for days of old lang syne. And here's a hand, my trusty friend, and here's a hand of thine. We'll talk a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne. We'll talk a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and days of old lang syne? For old lang syne.